Yeah, absolutely. Great topic. Great to be here again with you. I think the way to start thinking about it is almost from a strategic perspective first, where you're thinking about some answers to some important questions straight out the gate, meaning like what kind of valuation goals do you have in mind, or financial wealth goals? What sort of time frame are you considering? What kind of role do you want to feasibly take in the organization after the transaction, or are you looking to retire? I think those are important things to be starting to consider first, because it can help frame your focus and areas of emphasis as you get ready to try to sell your business, but then also give you a chance to narrow your scope a little bit to the types of buyers that would be most receptive to your business, and the what you're up to and what you can offer to them on the go forward. That's probably thing number one to be thinking about, and having crisp answers to those questions, because you will get asked them, depending on the sophistication of the buyer in place. But then from there, I think the other areas to focus in on from a preparatory perspective is it falls into a couple of different buckets, and we can dive into to further detail as we go along. But overall, it's things like just your financial and operational preparations, customer customer preparation, but then also the underlying information and data readiness that really ties each of these different buckets. Those are incredibly important things to be mindful of, and you can do it in such a way that you set it up as a regular cadence of updates that you are collating monthly, for instance, so that it just becomes part of your process, so that when someone comes calling that is particularly compelling or interesting, you don't have to scramble to gather the information that they may request to see, and without having it be a distraction to you or a time-consuming effort that draws in not just a whole lot of your time, but also other members of your team with whom you may be trying to keep this effort discreet or quiet from for at least the initial go. So those are the first couple of things to think about, and happy to dive in further.
So do you feel that when sellers are the kinds of sellers that you're talking with, what is sort of their level of preparation around it? Do you see a full range? Do you feel like, can it fit? Yeah.
Yeah, it really can be a full range of awareness, familiarity, preparation, whether from a data perspective or answering to the questions that I mentioned a moment ago. It really goes across the full spectrum. And I think that if you are a seller that is, or that can present themselves in a more organized and coordinated fashion, that is going to be tremendously helpful, valuable, and may even be valuable to you, when it comes to transaction perspective, because you're being that much more efficient with everyone's time and effort through the course of that transaction process. So it really behooves a seller to be as organized and on the ball as possible, because for instance, me as a buyer, I'm not just looking at one company at a time. And if there is one organization that is better organized, an owner that's got their stuff together, that opportunity is going to be much more interesting for me to pursue, because I can use my time that much more smartly as I look to evaluate opportunities for our business, and that can ultimately bring a higher degree of certainty to close, getting a deal done, better valuation for your business. All sorts of positive attributes can come to play when you've got things organized.
So I think what you're saying is, listen, these are things that you should do anyways, as a way for you to improve the operational effectiveness of your business.
Absolutely.
And use this as an extra motivation to get that done and button it down.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. And the other thing too is that sometimes it can take time to enact changes in the business. And so you want to be able to give yourself the opportunity to be at your strongest position when going up for sale. So if there are more constructive contractual agreements that you want to put in place with your clients, you can't all do that all with the snap of a finger. That takes time to put into place. And so That's something to work on, or changing around the charter of accounts within your financial statements. That isn't something that always can happen with the flip of a switch. Getting the right people in the right roles within your organization, that can also take time to do. And so again, giving yourself the chance and the time to tackle these sorts of things, again, at the end of the day, that should hopefully drive a higher value for your business.
Yeah. You know what?
I think there's also equal opportunity to leverage individuals, resources, mentors, peer group, compatriots, third-party advisors that you work closely with to help get you prepared for this sort of situation, or ask questions of those who have gone through this before. What sort of lessons can you learn? What things can you do to avoid pitfalls and the like? And so I think being able to go down this path or proceed on this journey not alone can be tremendously helpful and valuable, just so that you've got some unvarnished perspective from a peer group colleague, or some strong advice from an accountant who has done this sort of work for multitude of other clients of theirs. That sort of perspective can be super, super valuable as you think about what you want to, or what your goals are through the end of the process.
You mentioned clients and relationships with clients right at the very beginning. When you were looking at a seller, do you think about, hey, what is the quality of the relationship that the seller has with its clients, and how would you go about, if I were a seller, how would I go about sort of shoring those relationships up, or making sure that there aren't any grievances that clients have?
Yeah, look, it's an important thing to think about, because in this services business that we're in, at the root of it, what we are acquiring is the client contracts and the technical talent that you have on your team. That is the core ethos, or the core value that your business has. And so being able to have a comfortably strong understanding and sense of the strength of those relationships with your clients is tremendously important. The other thing that I would add to that as a corollary is, depending on what you as a seller intends to do after the transaction, the strength of those client relationships and who they are within the organization is also important to consider. So for example, if you as the seller have the primary relationship with all of your clients, or the largest of your clients, no one else on your team does, and yet you are intending to retire as soon as the transaction takes place, that is likely a problematic scenario, because the buyer is going to think, oh, I can't ascribe any long-term value to these contracts, even in light of what's written on the page, if the person who has the primary connection is leaving. And so there's also an opportunity to, and that the corollary becomes, this improves operational maturity of your business, but an opportunity to transition the primacy of those relationships to your team members, who will be part of the go forward concern, the go forward company combined together. That's sort of something that can be done and that reflects as a hallmark of business maturity.
Yeah. From a contractual standpoint, when it comes to contracts with your employees, or contracts with clients, or with your vendors, are there some key things that you want to make sure you've checked the boxes around in terms of the language and what it allows you to do or doesn't allow you to do?
Yeah, I think an important one to think about, and I'll think about the client contracts and the vendor contracts as well. And this will include the leases that you have for your office, assignability of the contract. And what that essentially means is that when you have sold your business, how easy is it for the buyer to assume that contract? Does it happen automatically? Does it require a sign-off or written approval from either the client or from the vendor? in order for a buyer to, take responsibility for the terms and service and operation of that contract. If you can set up your agreements, particularly on the client side, where the assignability of those contracts doesn't have any restrictions, that is optimal or advantageous, because then you don't have to worry about, as a buyer, or worry anymore about the viability of those contracts going forward. Exactly. And, we spend time during our diligence effort, undertaking a survey of the clients and getting third-party support to evaluate the strength of those client relationships through, a call survey where, they're asking questions on behalf of the seller, to understand the strength of the relationship, where are the positives, the challenges, would they, look to competitors if someone came calling? Is there something else that they, wish they got out of the relationship or the contract with the MSP? All those sorts of things we're trying to understand, and to get a perspective, not just hearing it solely from the owner of the business, to help inform us on the strength of those client relationships. And then what it also does is, if there are issues at hand that can be addressed, we frame it as, and we believe this wholeheartedly, that it becomes a collective we problem to solve, as opposed to a you problem to be solved. So,
it certainly sounds like, from the time that the idea pops into your head that maybe I want to think about a sale, to the time that you're actually seriously engaging in that conversation with a buyer, a lot of work probably has to happen, if it hasn't happened already. And these pieces of work are not things that you can do overnight. I mean, these are process-related things that might take some time to put into place. Is it unusual that a firm might need to spend 6 months to a year sort of like setting this up properly before they say, okay, you know what, I'm now ready to get on the market?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would even say that 6 months to a year is probably on the shorter time frame to really get the full breadth and impact of those changes to be realized and to take effect. So, sometimes it's a year or two or some 3 before you see the full positive benefit from those changes. Yeah, but you made an interesting point there around, you start to do things and you've got a little bit of initial momentum, and then you kind of you slide backwards a little bit into the day-to-day routine of your business. And in scenarios like that, that's where I think there is tremendous value that can come from being part of a peer group, where you have that measure of accountability to your fellow colleagues in the peer group, but also that accountability to yourself, as you're getting together monthly or quarterly or whatever the cadence might be. But that can be a great way to help ensure that you don't lose the momentum that you've embarked upon, or that you've built up, to try to get yourself ready for an eventual sale.
Well, Chris, I really appreciate it. I wanted to keep it very short and to the point, because this is a really important topic that I feel sellers often don't probably focus that much on. They focus a lot more on their operational day-to-day stuff, which is what they know and love. But I really appreciate your taking the time to get these points across. Thanks a lot, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it. Hopefully folks learn, 1 or 2 things that they can apply to themselves and to their own businesses. And look forward to hopefully doing many more of these conversations.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much.